My mother called me out of the blue on a Tuesday afternoon, after 9 years of absolute icy silence. She didn't ask how I was doing, nor did she acknowledge nearly a decade of emotional abandonment. Instead, she gasped into the receiver and said, "Sarah, I saw the News Forbes article about your asset management firm. We need you to wire $240,000 to your brother's business account by tomorrow morning. It's the exact amount you owe this family for turning your back on us after your grandmother died." I sat in my corner office on the 42nd floor, staring out at the Manhattan skyline. At 35, I was the founding partner of a highly successful corporate law and venture capital firm. I spent my days negotiating multi-million-dollar acquisitions and dissecting ironclad contracts. I was completely unshakable in the boardroom, but hearing my mother's voice instantly brought back the stinging cold of a winter afternoon 9 years ago, the day my family gathered to read my grandmother's will and told me I was completely written out of it. "I don't owe you or Julian a single cent, Mother," I replied, my voice dropping into the quiet, clinical tone I used when preparing to destroy a hostile opponent in court. "Don't lie to me, Sarah," she snapped, her voice trembling with synthetic outrage. "You left us to struggle while you amassed millions. Your brother is facing bankruptcy because of a predatory commercial loan. As your mother, I am ordering you to fix this. Family supports each other." I looked down at the physical copy of the document I had spent the last week securing from a private investigator. "You're right, Mother," I said softly. "Family should support each other. Let's discuss this in person tomorrow." To understand the sheer audacity of my mother's demand, you have to look back at the dynamic that defined my entire youth. I was the studious, quiet daughter who spent every weekend working at my grandmother's small antique bakery, while my younger brother Julian was the spoiled prince who spent his time racing cars and draining my parents' modest savings. My parents openly adored Julian, praising him for simply existing, while my achievements, graduating law school with top honors and passing the bar exam, were treated as minor, expected chores. My grandmother, Clara, was the only person in that family who truly saw me. She was a fierce, independent businesswoman who had built a successful real estate portfolio from scratch. She paid for my law school tuition, not as a handout, but as an investment, telling me, "Sarah, you have the mind of a leader. Never let anyone make you feel small." When she fell ill 9 years ago, I was the only one who slept in the hospital armchair, managing her medications and holding her hand. Julian and my parents only visited on the final day, looking more interested in the hospital's VIP suite amenities than my grandmother's fading breaths. The day after her funeral, the family gathered at our old suburban home. Julian sat on the sofa, smirking, while my mother handed me a single typed sheet of paper. "Your grandmother left everything to Julian," she said coldly. "The bakery, her 3 properties, and her investment accounts. She felt that since you already had a law degree, you didn't need her help. She wanted to secure your brother's future." I was heartbroken, completely devastated that the woman who raised me had seemingly erased me. I packed my bags, cut all ties, and moved to the city, vowing never to look back. For 9 years, I poured my grief and anger into my work. I specialized in estate law and corporate litigation, eventually launching my own asset management firm. My company grew rapidly, investing in distressed real estate and turning failing businesses into profitable tech hubs. 3 weeks ago, my firm made national headlines when we achieved a private valuation of $45 million. That news article was what triggered my mother's sudden phone call. But what my family didn't know was that I hadn't just been building a business during those 9 years. 6 months ago, my firm was approached by a commercial bank to handle the liquidation of a distressed real estate portfolio. As I reviewed the files, my heart stopped. The portfolio belonged to a shell company owned by my brother Julian. He had taken out a massive, high-interest commercial loan, using my grandmother's old properties as collateral, and had completely defaulted on the payments. Out of professional instinct, I hired a private investigator to dig into the original transfer of those properties 9 years ago. What he uncovered inside a dusty archive at the county probate court made my blood boil. My grandmother had never written me out of her will. The document my mother had shown me was a complete fabrication. The authentic, notarized will left 60% of her entire estate, including the commercial properties and her primary investment funds, directly to me. My mother and Julian had deliberately hidden the real will, forged my grandmother's signature on a fraudulent probate petition, and stolen my birthright. The next morning, my mother and Julian arrived at my firm's headquarters. They walked into the glass-walled conference room looking smug, clearly intimidated by the luxury of the office but trying desperately to hide it. Julian wore a flashy, expensive watch that I knew was bought with debt, while my mother clutched an outdated designer handbag. "Well, Sarah," Julian said, throwing himself into an ergonomic leather chair and propping his feet up. "Nice place you've got here. I guess our grandmother's absence really motivated you. Now, about that $240,000 wire transfer. The bank gave me until 4 p.m. today to clear the default, or they seized the main commercial plaza. Let's get the paperwork signed so we can leave." I sat across from them, my hands neatly clasped on the polished marble table. I didn't have any papers for a wire transfer. Instead, I had a thick black leather binder resting right in front of me. "Julian," I said, my voice low and perfectly composed, "before we discuss your debt, let's discuss the concept of ownership. Do you honestly believe you own that commercial plaza?" My mother frowned, leaning forward. "What kind of question is that? Of course he owns it. Your grandmother left it to him in her will. We showed you the document 9 years ago. Don't start playing legal games now, Sarah. Your brother needs the money today." "Let's talk about that will," I said, opening the black binder. I pulled out a high-resolution color copy of the document they had presented to me 9 years ago, alongside a certified copy of the authentic will my investigator had uncovered. "This is the document you gave me at the dining table, and this is the real will filed in the private archives of Grandma's original estate attorney, who passed away shortly after her." I slid the documents across the table. My mother's face instantly turned an ash-gray color. Julian stopped smirking, his eyes widening as he recognized his own clumsy handwriting on the altered probate forms. "You thought that because the original attorney died, your secret was safe," I continued, my voice sharp and clinical. "You forged Grandma's signature, hid the real will, and unlawfully seized millions of dollars in assets that belonged to me. For 9 years, I lived with the crushing pain of thinking my grandmother had abandoned me, while you two lived off the fruits of her hard work and my stolen inheritance." "Sarah, please," my mother stammered, her voice suddenly losing its arrogant edge, her hands trembling. "We did it for the family. Julian needed a start in life. You were already so smart and successful. We didn't think you would mind. You committed felony grand larceny, document forgery, and probate fraud," I said, completely ignoring her pathetic excuse. "And the irony is, Julian is so utterly incompetent that he managed to bankrupt a multi-million-dollar estate in less than a decade." Julian slammed his hands on the table, trying to regain his posture. "So what? It was 9 years ago. The statute of limitations is running out, and besides, you can't prove anything in court before the bank forecloses on me today. If you don't wire the money, the plaza is gone anyway, and you get nothing." I let out a soft, mocking laugh that made Julian freeze. I leaned back in my chair and looked at him with pure pity. "Julian, you should really pay closer attention to who buys your debts. 3 weeks ago, a commercial bank put your defaulted loan up for auction. A private equity firm bought 100% of your debt notes, the mortgage, and the rights to immediate foreclosure." I turned the page of the binder and slid a final contract toward him. At the bottom of the page, under the acquiring corporation's name, was my signature as the sole CEO. "My firm bought your debt, Julian," I said, each word landing like a gavel. "I don't need to wire you $240,000 because I am the one you owe the money to. I own your mortgage. I own the bakery. I own the plaza. And as of 9 a.m. this morning, I filed the official paperwork to execute an immediate asset foreclosure due to non-payment. You don't have until 4 p.m. You are evicted as of right now." My mother let out a sharp sob, clutching her chest. Julian looked at the paper, his mouth open in absolute horror. They had walked into my office expecting a bailout, only to realize I already held the keys to their destruction. "You can't do this to us, Sarah. We are your family," my mother wailed, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. "Where are we supposed to go? Julian put everything into that plaza. We will be homeless. You should have thought about family before you stole my grandmother's legacy," I replied, standing up and buttoning my blazer. "But I'm not done. As a licensed attorney, I am legally obligated to report instances of felony fraud. 2 hours ago, my legal team delivered the complete forensic file of your forgery and probate fraud to the state prosecutor's office. A criminal investigation has already been opened. Right on cue, the heavy glass doors of the conference room opened. 2 corporate security guards, accompanied by 2 uniformed police officers, stepped inside. My mother shrieked, covering her face, while Julian sat frozen in his chair, completely paralyzed by the sudden reality of his downfall. "Mr. Vance, Mrs. Vance, you need to step out of the building immediately," the officer said, stepping toward Julian. "And Julian Vance, you are being detained for questioning regarding an ongoing investigation into financial fraud." The officers pulled Julian out of his chair, placing him in handcuffs right in front of his weeping mother. They were marched out through the main lobby, passing dozens of my employees who watched the entire disgraceful spectacle in silence. The glass doors shut, restoring the absolute, beautiful silence of my office. I walked over to the window, took a deep breath, and felt a massive invisible weight lift off my shoulders. For 9 long years, I had carried the silent ache of feeling rejected by the only person who loved me. Now, looking at the authentic will sitting on my desk, I knew the truth. Grandma had believed in me all along. The legal resolution was swift and unyielding. Faced with irrefutable forensic evidence, Julian pled guilty to grand larceny and fraud. He was sentenced to 4.5 years in a state facility. The remaining properties were fully restored to my name by court order. My mother, completely broke and disgraced within her social circle, had to move into a tiny, state-subsidized apartment, her reputation entirely shattered. She tried to mail me letters begging for forgiveness, but they were sent straight to the paper shredder. Today I stand inside the beautifully renovated antique bakery that my grandmother once ran, watching the customers enjoy their morning coffee. The business is thriving under my management, a living monument to the woman who believed in my potential. I finally balanced the ledger of my past. I proved to them that greed might give you a head start, but in the end, truth and intelligence will always audit the books and claim what is rightfully theirs.